Justice Complex, so I assume that the general will be there.
Good evening.
So I'm
It's never too loud.
It's never too loud. The I call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. and that's the clerk to read the statement of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act into the record for the deputy clerk. Lindsay's in charge tonight.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, with the meeting schedule advertised in the January 10th, 2024 edition of the Chronicle Times. The meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board at City Hall and the city's website, and the meeting notice was sent to members of the listserv, department heads, and the city engineer on Friday, August 30th, 2024. The meeting agenda offers planned action items known at the time of publication and is subject to change. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live using the Zoom meeting platform.
Have a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Kaminsky?
here.
Councilman Lyne?
Here.
Councilman Stegman?
Here.
Council President Lambert? Here. Mayor North?
Here. All right, just please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll remain standing for a moment of silence tonight to reflect on the 3rd anniversary of IDA. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We will start off this evening's meeting with the first of the 2 public participation periods. As usual, we ask people on the state mobility issues to step up to the podium here, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes of uninterrupted time to make a comment or ask questions. The council may or may not respond. So if there are members of the public who would like to offer comment tonight.
Good evening. My name is Larry. I'm up. Is this on? Okay. Good, thanks. 5 Liberty View Court, Lambertville. I'm here to ask that the council modify its current practice of asking speakers to come before you and ask all 3 of their questions. The problem with that is that it doesn't allow for any feedback from the public. It doesn't allow for any interactive information exchange. And I've been talking to quite a few people who brought it up to me who said, this just isn't right that, you ask a question, you get an answer, and then there's no opportunity to speak to it or to modify your question or ask for clarification at all. So I sincerely ask you to change that practice. In addition, so that when the public speaks, the timer's on. When the council or the mayor speaks, the timer goes off, so that you can, as they say in chamber meetings or at the House of Representatives, I reserve my time for further questions. Does that seem like an approach that could happen? I think it'd get a better informed citizen who could interactively seek information from the council and the mayor.
Well, have you finished?
Yes, thank you.
So,
I reserve my
And
time.
we have instituted no policy changes yet. So I just received your email today. I think you probably copied the council on that. I will certainly consider it, and I can speak to that at the September 19th meeting. So I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. As the mayor, as the chair of this meeting, I will set the policy for public comment. We have adapted it since I've been mayor to allow for a second public comment period. So I want to reflect on this. Your email just called me today, so I need time to think about this and to consider your questions, and then seek conversation from the council members kind of when we have our usual conversations. I'll be happy to speak to it at September 19th.
Thank you for that. I think it really improved the conversation.
I just
on the record, I mean, I'll go on right now. I have no problem in doing that. And I really have never been in favor of the 3-minute or a 5-minute, length of time. I think we're a small community, we're 4,000 people. We all can talk to each other in dialogues civilly at a meeting. And, this is like, I think, I always think of this as, it's America, that's what we should be doing. So I'm totally want to say that I'm all for it. And I'm all for the exchange too, because that's what, our public discourse and having these meetings are about. Ask me a question. I want to give you an answer. I want to hear what you have to say. And, it evolves as you talk. So I'm all for it.
Anybody else want to weigh in at this point?
I agree with Councilwoman Kaminsky. I think it's important to hear from the public. And I think it's important to listen to the public and have feedback, conversation. I do think I am in favor of eliminating the 3-minute, 5-minute, whatever. That was a bit of controversy several years ago. I think we would need to have some sort of protocol for how we, kind of have some sort of parameters around individuals, right? You don't want somebody up here for an hour, but they might be saying important things, but still others, courtesy for others, right? So, yeah.
I wasn't objecting to the time limit as much as the lack of interactivity.
So I would just comment that I agree with you, Larry. I think that you brought a lot of good points in your email. I think we can continue to improve the public participation. And I would just note that although the mayor has office hours where he can meet with people and have that, back and forth, unfortunately we don't. And so, I really think that these council meetings are the opportunity not just to engage with the mayor, but also members of council too. And so this is really the best place to do it. You have any thoughts?
I agree.
I'll just note that the part of the administrative code does restrict public comment to 3 minutes. So that was enacted, that amendment was passed unanimously at the beginning of my term in March of 2022. The previous administration had been using that 3 minutes, even though I think at that point that the code said 5 minutes. Yeah, but we had a discussion about it earlier in my term and felt that 3 minutes was appropriate. And so that amendment was passed in March of 2022. So we will follow up at the next meeting about this. Thank you.
Hi there, Beth O'Brien, 2 Hancock Street. The last time we met with last time we had a city council meeting was the evening before you were to be meeting with the judge, and I believe it was the mayor and Councilman Lai. I'm wondering what transpired from that meeting, if the judge was sympathetic to our explanation of what's been brought to light on the proposed site, and if he's sympathetic to us in allowing us to move in a different direction and giving us the opportunity to come up with an alternate plan than what's been proposed.
I'm just not going to make any comment about the meeting with the judge and the court master. I don't think that's I don't think that's this is the right time to do that. There are things that are happening, but I can't speak to those right now.
I would just remind everyone too that there's an ongoing process here where if we are going to have to adjust this plan, we're going to have to renegotiate with Fair Share. And I think it would not be a good idea to make public comments that would affect the process for it. I can tell you just from my perspective, it was an engaging meeting. I think that the judge, and the special master, heard what we were saying, and there's a process to this, and we also got to remember that public comment might not help that process too. So I think at the appropriate time when we can make an update, I certainly would want to do that.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Jeff Tittle, 33 Wilson Street. Just want to start off, since it's the 3rd anniversary of Ida, which is an important date in our history, and And it's the 49th anniversary of when Lady Bird Johnson came to town to go up on the Commons, which is now Conant Hill, because it was part of the war on poverty. 49 years later, it still is. It's been the most neglected part of this town. When we were coming into town and we were looking for a place to live, the realtors wouldn't even take us up there. It's been an area that has been exploited. It's been dumped on. Garbage dump that has no limits because we don't know where it ends or begins. The factory at the old school and the dumping that occurred there and the waste that's there. And now this massive project that would destroy that neighborhood forever. And I think, it's the time to reflect on all of that because one, if we build up on that mountain and it's steep slopes and we get rid of all those forests, we're not gonna be able to control that water. We have contamination up there. We don't know the extent of it. It's not been shared records as far as I know from the property owner. We know there's PFAS in wells at fairly high level nearby. We don't know what else is up there. And the point that I'm making is all these things coming together says that's why it's absolutely the wrong place to build affordable housing or any major development in this town. When you look at the fact that if there is contamination up there, they're gonna have to come up with a cleanup plan. They're gonna have to approve it. They're gonna have to carry it out. They're gonna have to remediate it. And can they even remediate to a residential standard? We have no idea because we don't know the limits of the portion or what's up there. That alone should be a reason to go to the judge to basically say the site is inappropriate. And every day we come up with more, whether it's the traffic patterns up there and the dangerous intersections and the narrow roads, whether it's can we even hook it into our storm system to bring water to the river? Most likely not because our system doesn't work now. You go through all the different pieces, then we have to trust a Dominion who gave an ultimatum. How do you negotiate with ultimatums? And then they also have a terrible record on stormwater. I was involved with the lawsuit with the EPA. Now we have Michael's with their whole legal problem. Every day, it seems to be more reasons why we have to come up with an alternative. And so while you're negotiating with the judge, you're talking to the judge, you should also be looking at potential alternatives. Because if we get the okay to do it, we need to do it quickly, because as we all know, we have a little over a year to try to get a good plan in place and to be able to move forward with affordable housing and provide that reasonable opportunity to build that housing, which is desperately needed in this town. But we have to do it in an environmentally sound way. We have to be able to do it in a way that that furthers the interests and goals of this community. I think on that mountain, it's too big. It's the wrong place. It's the wrong time. It's too damaging. And so now's the chance to try to fix that. We cannot keep, and I think the lesson from Lady Bird Johnson and 49 years ago is we can't keep making the same mistakes of the past. We have to take care of that community. We have to fix the problem with the contaminated wells up there. Thank you.
Sean Ellis, 21 Belvedere. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to?
No, we're, Secretary, everybody's fine. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think I want to pick up on where Jeff left off there because, when we talk about resiliency, we had the workshop, the resiliency workshop, and all the focus was on stormwater and flooding. And right now, a whole neighborhood is going through a crisis, and we're told that it's up to the individual homeowners. I couldn't imagine if that was what we told people who experienced a flood, but that's what we're being told. And we're being told maybe we might want to contact the county. We might want to contact the DEP. Well, there is no contact for the DEP. I sent a spill fund claim in about a month ago, just about a month ago. I know that they received it because it was certified mail. No response, no acknowledgement, no call, no anything. You try to reach them on the contact email they provide, bounces back. You try to call them on that. I've tried so many times, same recorded message. I'm sorry, we're not available to take your call. We have no one other than ourselves. And I am just completely baffled at that, when I was filling out the resiliency survey the other day, at how much of a slap in the face that really is. Because I think Jeff had it right, people on that hill are not treated the same as the people downtown, it seems. And I want to see that change. I I also, would love to, if there are any updates. Cindy, I know you said it would take a long time. I don't expect you to have a lot, but I'm gonna be asking you a lot. And so if there's any updates on, give grants or progress with getting water up the hill, I'd love to hear about them. And last thing I want to say is I respect the process that you're going through with the judge, and I don't want to be premature in doing anything that could, create negative consequences or put us in a bad position. But I do agree with Jeff that at the right appropriate time that the LHS site needs to be taken off of the affordable housing plan, because 200 units, it's just not gonna happen, and it can't happen. And if they're not willing to negotiate on that, we'll just wait for the day when we can pull that, yank that, I guess. But I would encourage you to do that as soon as possible. So, yeah.
I would just say, Sean, I agree, when you bring up the comparison to the flood, people that didn't get flooded out, they helped the people that did. And, I think that we can do more. I think if you can continue to send us a lot of the environmental issues, that will help. And, I'm happy to make phone calls to people I know at the DEP, that would help out as well. I don't know if there's many people there, but I do know a couple, and I'm happy to make those phone calls if I can.
Yeah, we have 6 total positive tests. All the tests have been positive. 1 in West Amwell, 5 in Lambertville so far, and they're coming in every week.
I would just say that it would be helpful to have that information, because the last count I had was 2. So
Okay.
if people are able to send their test results to the city, I think that would be enormously helpful. We can then send those to the DEP. We have a contact with the DEP. We can also send them to the county.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people, and we did send out a letter today, I think it was today or yesterday, to every private well owner in the city, encouraging them to get tested, giving them some resources, and letting them know that we're here for informational purposes at a minimum. So please encourage those people to send their results directly to me.
I have 5 of the 6. I'll try to get all of them.
Thank you.
Also, too, just to mention, at the last council meeting, people that can't afford to fix this too, they should be reaching out to us so we can talk about seeing how we can help that. Because
Okay.
Mayor, I'd just like to mention that it's concerning that citizens are sending in information to a black hole in DEP. And if there's anything that we can do, to kind of rattle their chain, we would say, get us the right contacts, what's the process, what's the right phone number? It's really disheartening to hear that emails bounce back, there's no telephone support.
Well, so I have a contact, I can't remember the person's name. I spoke to somebody at the DEP, and I'm sure you know who you probably who I spoke to. But I have her email, and she's asked me to have results sent, and then she sent us all the resources which we distributed to.
Right, but I think at this point, Sean, we've been talking, you fill out the rest of that. Sean has a great Excel spreadsheet of the results, because, I'm still pursuing some type of, answer, gauge the courts, but I think it's Megan Bernardi in the commissioner's office. And we really, need to be able to say, look, the number's growing. We need more than the links. I mean, look, we also have these drums that are buried up there that are outside of the landfill area that, like, I'd like to be able to alert them to, and, start getting some more action from the department on it. I think that our urgency would be more of their urgency. So we're moving beyond like that. It's just a private well issue, that it's a community, environmental issue that I think it's time we push them on. So
We
concur,
also-
right. Well, I think we need to report that officially and kind of, move ahead on some things. Doug, we, got Doug here.
Go
Well,
ahead.
no, not that you're, but, you know, we really need to, you know, get with our professionals and pursue this. I'm totally there.
Thank you.
All right, before we move on, I'm just gonna ask Cindy, this might be a good time for you to give an update on the triad, anything else that you wanna,
So the city has a grant, it's an old grant from the state of New Jersey called Small Cities. And so it took us some time to get confirmation that we could use that funding. But we have that available and that would pay for the testing to be done and also any remediation or mitigation that needs to be done. But that is for people who income qualify.
Right, how much money do we have in that account? About,
Over 200,000, I believe. This is recaptured funds.
Yeah.
So we got this grant back in the 70s and 80s for people to upgrade their home, if they needed a roof or whatever. But again, you have to income qualify. So we will have an application, we'll have the process. And so I just encourage anybody to reach out to me and I'll help you through. We'll need to fill out the application. We'll need to gather, I think it's 3 years of IRS statements. I mean, there'll be things that you have to do, but I'm happy to help you through it. And then we'll scan it and get it off to them. But we can use that for that. We did confirm that today. And the only other thing I want to say, Mayor, was when we pulled that list of property owners we believe have wells, we included Conant Hill, Cottage Hill, Music Mountain, because somebody at last meeting said that it was across the board. So we sent that out to everybody, but there could be somebody in town who is still on a well that we're not aware of. So if you are, please reach out to me. And I'm happy to be the conduit. You can call, you can email me, whatever, and we'll make it a priority. Here, did I miss anything?
oh, thank you. And thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you.
Please, Jen.
Hi, Jennifer Town.
sorry, just one other thing to add about the wells. It was confirmed yesterday to me that it was number 2 Stutterford Street that came positive for those. And as soon as I get mine back from being tested, I'll report to the council and about 100 Stutterford Street.
Please.
Jennifer Town, Hancock Street. So first, I just want to thank the neighbors that have been great in supporting us and communicating and asking ShopRite for water and really caring for our neighbors. Because it's you guys that make our community, which is amazing. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everybody for all of that. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the council meeting with us, talking to us, having these conversations. But again, my statement I always make, we're a community. 200 houses is a development, doesn't fit, where we live. It's just not the, so that was the first thing. Secondly, I want to support what the other gentleman initially said about making this a two-way conversation. I agree about having limits, parameters around it, but there have been so many comments that have come up that I just keep adding notes to, and I'm way too ADD to keep it in order that it's not going to make sense. So I don't think we can have better communication if we communicate 2 ways. We had our water tested today, so hopefully we'll have results soon and we'll share that as soon as we do. Question about the grant, the income qualify, what is the income level for that? Do you know offhand?
I don't know offhand,
Okay.
because there's low income and moderate.
Okay. What else did I write? Sorry. Oh, and then just the other thing, my personal opinion. I feel most of the council, most of the folks up here have been supportive of questioning the 200 houses, questioning that many developments. And I know this is going to sound offensive, and I'm apologizing to you, Mayor, for that. It feels like you're not.
We don't make individual comments to individual people. on
No,
the
not
list.
individual people. In a whole, when you speak, everyone says, "Ooh, that's concerning. Yes, we need to look into that." I personally feel this way, and I just don't feel that way, and that just makes me feel less cared about by our city, I guess, that the mayor doesn't.
I'm going to ask you not to make remarks about an individual on the dais. It's not
Okay.
appropriate.
like I said, I didn't want to insult you, but I'm just sharing my feelings about how it feels being a community member, that's all. That's all. I really appreciate what you guys are doing and sharing all of this and having these conversations, but I just like to make sure we're heard. That's all, and supported. Thank you, appreciate your time.
Paul Stevens, 3940. A lot of this discussion tonight so far is reminding me back to, I think it might have been in June, when I got up and we were talking about this development, and I was suggesting that it was a good time to start thinking about working with our partners in West Amwell, because this is going to affect their residents up there also. And even the day after, I thought about how that could help us even more than stormwater, but also, eventually trying to explain that if we decide not to do this project up there or anything like it in the future, that we're going to need good justification. We're going to be, because of, like you said, fair share housing, the judge and all of this, there's a sword over us right now, frankly. And having West Amwell as an ally in this and having them speak out both to the DEP now and potentially if we need their support when we go back to fair share housing or the judge or whatever, saying this is a real issue up here in terms of stormwater, but also now all of this unknown with the environmental aspects of the site. And I actually went back and I couldn't be here on the August 15th one, and I went back, I listened to the recording, and somebody else came up and was asking you if you'd reached out to West Amwell, and you said you hadn't, even though I shared this with you in Mary Sheridan Park about, look, they could be an ally for us in all of this, the court case and everything else. You mentioned that, yes, you would be reaching out to them. I'm wondering if you have yet, if you thought about, what you want to talk to them about, just trying to gather some more support outside of just Lambertville, because this is a bigger issue. Okay, thank you.
I'll just say a version of what I said last time. I haven't reached out to West Amwell. I think it's kind of premature in terms of the high school redevelopment area plan. When such a time is appropriate, I think I'll be happy to reach out. I've talked to one of their council people recently about stormwater issues, but until such time as something moves forward and we have something to talk about, I don't see the need to reach out specifically to talk about something that hasn't happened or is still in process.
Suzanne Davis, 8 Grand Avenue, and about West Amwell, in my meetings with people and all the information, nobody's really heard too much about this project, and it will affect them because of the traffic, if nothing else. What I want to say is that I moved to Conant Hill about 25 years ago, and there were parts of it that probably were not so different than what Lady Bird described. People were living in all kinds of marginal situations. There was a feral cat colony, which eventually was cleaned up, but the place was overrun with cats. There were tires, dumped all over. I think we even had a tire cleanup one day where we went and we took all the tires. And my ex-mother-in-law reported that she lived up in Califon, that they had gathered a group of women together at one point to go down to Conant Hill to teach the women there how to wash. So it was a very marginal kind of a place to be. Now, coming up, all of us, I think, on Conant Hill have worked very hard on our properties. We really tried to bring the neighborhood up. We've done a lot of work. We've taken away, there was a crack house up above where I live, that's gone now. So we have like a lot of good neighbors. We have a wonderful neighborhood. People are always out working on their properties and trying to bring things up. And I just really want to say that this project will devastate the whole neighborhood. And I hope that you take that into consideration, you know, in your future negotiations with the state.
Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. A couple of things based on what the agenda is and what people have said so far. First on the agenda, the stormwater discussion. I looked through the amendment. I will say first, it's very difficult to see what is being amended. I mean, maybe I just, having worked in this area in much of my professional life, I'm used to being able to tell what's being amended. I couldn't, so I'm guessing it might be difficult for others as well, but I will say that when you guys are looking at this, and when we're talking about it later, I guess, just reread the policy paragraph, because it really is pretty clear, and low impact development is part of what our policy is. And yes, green stuff and various things, you know, rain gardens and stuff, but we're talking about a situation we all know from Ida and other rainstorms. It's way bigger than green infrastructure, rain garden stuff. And we need to be looking at something besides how can we come up with 40 low income houses when we're talking about low impact development. We're not doing low impact development in the very area where stormwater is a huge issue. So I'm just asking that whatever we talk about today in the discussion period, and whatever people tell us about how this is working so well, I just want to tell you, we don't think it's working that well. And perhaps you could read your policy statement again and see what we're supposed to be doing. Secondly, on the affordable housing issue and the fact that you can't share what you've talked to the judge about, and I get that, but Fair Share is in this with us. They're not in this against us. We should be aware of the fact that many times working with other organizations means you need to work with the other organizations. And some of what Fair Share said back in 2019, I think it was, maybe 2020, and they were saying representations that had been made to them by the city about areas like on Delavan, areas like where we now have however many houses down by the YMAT, they had been told that our people resisted low-income housing, and that's why we didn't do it. Well, we know that's not true. And every time it comes up, you know it's not true. People in this town would rather have low-income housing or affordable housing, I guess is the correct word, that more than anything. So I think it's not a bad idea for you to think about bringing in the people who are not against us. We're all trying to get to the same place. So if you can possibly sort of reread your own stuff, it might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody online?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to close the public comment period, please?
I have one comment I'd like to make.
Please.
I know historically, the Hill has not been a priority. However, Del Vecchio did the last major change up there. They cleaning up the tires, going through and making sure that there were property owners and for existing lots up there. And through that effort, and we also put drainage up on the hill during that time period. And we were able to clear up some lots in order to sell them and combine slivers of lots into one big lot so they could be marketed, and that brought Habitat up there where they built two, I believe, on Hill City.
Actually, Habitat has, I want to say four or five.
So, you know, the blanket statement is a blanket statement. I'm just saying that, just keep in mind that there have been efforts to upgrade services up on the hill. Okay, is there more things we can do? Absolutely. You know, we were, Dave's administration, you know, we created the park up on the hill as well. So the blanket that we don't do anything, I mean, I personally could take, I was there, I know we did some things. Maybe, will we address those going forward, but we actually made an effort to get things cleaned up on the hill. And Cindy, you were a representative.
Absolutely. I mean, we did a whole redevelopment plan that helped to clear the titles so people could build and the tire cleanup. One of the things Mr. Ellis had asked me to do some research on it, I had to go back to the minutes, starting back in, I want to say 1999. And I started earmarking the minutes with a certain color tab for everything that was done up on Connet Hill. So the governing body in the past has invested time and money in projects to help with they didn't have sewer. Now they had sewer. So you did sewer, we did stormwater. Yes, we did the small pocket park up there. There were cleanup efforts. There was a lot really done over, I want to say, a 10-year period of time.
Yeah.
And I would also remind people that since I've been mayor, we've repaved Washington Street, which hadn't been paved probably in 30 years. We also repaved Grant, Allen, and Coryell Road. So we've done some work in just the last 3 years as well. Right, have a motion to close the public comment. Get it, please. Have a second, please. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Right, we're going to move into a discussion, or really a presentation of the stormwater control ordinance, which is currently before the city for amendment and adoption. Just a couple notes about this. If everything is fine with this tonight, this will hopefully go to the planning board on September 18th if they are able to have a quorum for their review. We come back to the council for a second reading and public hearing on September 19th. We have sent this to the county, and I did get a letter from the state this week asking why we haven't done this. And so I had to send out a letter saying that we've been working on it diligently and kind of explain, lay out the process at this point. So Doug Racino is here, the city engineer. He's been instrumental in working with us on this ordinance and really kind of drafting it using different, researching what other municipalities are doing here in the state and really kind of tackling the ordinance to make it a stricter ordinance than the boilerplate ordinance that was sent to us from the DEP. So Doug sent a memo around back in, I think, August 19th. He's here tonight to just kind of walk us through the ordinance and the proposed changes of the ordinance and to answer any questions that the council members have. So without further ado, as they say, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Doug, to just begin to kind of talk a little bit about what the ordinance seeks to do generally, and maybe just highlight a couple of the key elements of the boilerplate from the state, and then how how this ordinance seeks to improve upon the state standards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by saying this ordinance is ordinance number 6-2024. It's actually an ordinance to amend Article 15 of the stormwater management, which is actually part of the zoning ordinance. It's section 1500 of the zoning ordinance. And so this is, as the mayor stated, this is actually taking place at this point in time due to municipal separate storm sewer system, which is MS4 Tier A permitting requirements. The state has required that all Tier A permits that they have to update their stormwater management ordinances. And so the state had provided a model ordinance called the Stormwater Control Ordinance that was provided to all the municipalities to basically as a starting point. So what I had done is taken that model ordinance, and first I compared it to the city's current ordinance. And in doing so, I noticed that there were items that were not in the model ordinance that I wanted to ensure were kept in the city's ordinance, such as redevelopment projects. Redevelopment projects did not appear to be talked about or discussed in the model ordinance. However, the city already had requirements for redevelopment projects, so that way redevelopment projects would also have to do stormwater management. And another item was actually an item that was approved by council last year, which was for private storm drain inlet retrofitting. That was an entire section of the ordinance that was adopted by the city as part of ordinance number 14-2023. So those are two of the main items that right off the bat, I wanted to make sure were put back into the ordinance, utilizing the model ordinance. Next, there were items that I know were quite important to the city, such as minor development. The city wanted to ensure currently that the city ordinance does not really speak of a minor development. So we wanted to ensure that there were now regulations placed on minor developments.
Could you just throw that for people who may not understand what minor development?
Yeah, I'm gonna
Okay,
get into
great,
the
thanks.
definitions of them. And so, those types of features, or those types of items, what I then did was look at other municipalities' ordinances in order to be able to not rewrite the book and find out how other municipalities were handling issues, again, such as the minor development, which I'll explain what it is, as well as like on-site retention volume and some other items. And so I looked at such ordinances as Jersey City and Princeton. They have probably two of the more stricter ordinances in the state. So I looked at both of theirs. I also utilized the New Jersey Future Enhanced Model Ordinance. What New Jersey Future, what they did was they took the state's model ordinance, and as the title states, they enhanced it. They utilized what new features and new requirements they feel should be started to be included in ordinances moving forward throughout the entire state. So I also utilized that ordinance, as well as comments from the gentleman that was here from the Watershed Institute. I don't know if anyone was here for that meeting. That was maybe 3 months ago, 2 to 3 months ago. I had also looked at comments made by that gentleman and tried to also incorporate them into this final ordinance that is before council tonight. And so to go through some of those items, I'll start with the minor development. Well, currently the ordinance has in it is a major development. So major development, we had actually revised the requirements and we lowered them. So that way, major developments, currently you need for the disturbance requirement portion, it used to require us only if you were 1/2 of an acre or more of disturbance, would you fall within a major development. So we lowered that to 1/4 acre or more. So instead of a 1/2 acre, now it's down to 1/4 acre. So if there's at least 1/4 acre of disturbance within the site, then it falls under a major development. Also for the creation of impervious surfaces, it used to be at 1/4 of an acre for the creation of impervious surfaces. We reduced that down to 4,000 square feet. So now any project that has a minimum of 4,000 square feet of impervious surface being created, they now fall into the category of a major development. So by doing that, then we created the minor development category. A minor development is, so for the disturbance of land, this one, the minor development goes from 1,000 square feet up to the 1/4 acre that would be required for a major development. The creation of impervious surface, it's from 400 square feet up to the 4,000 square feet for a major development. That would kick you into a major development. So that's the new category, is a minor development. And those are the requirements that you would have to meet in order to fall within a minor development category. So then another item that was added back in was mitigation. Actually, that was an item that did not appear in the model ordinance, but was in the city's current ordinance. And mitigation is basically if for any reason, due to existing site features, if stormwater cannot be done on that lot. Now, we're talking typically about smaller lots, not large-scale projects, subdivisions and all. They will definitely have to meet all requirements. But if somebody wants to put in an addition to their home on a quarter-acre lot, and the property just does not allow for any type of stormwater system to be installed there, there is options to mitigate existing city stormwater systems in order to help offset that additional impervious that's been added. So I wanted to make sure that that requirement was placed back into this ordinance. So we added to the ordinance to preserve and maintain the city of Lambertville stream corridor on each side of a waterway. That's one of the titles in the one section. Basically, we want to make sure that the stream corridor of the several waterways within the city, that they are preserved and maintained. And there's a section of the ordinance specifically discussing that requirement. There is another section, so there's also a whole section of the ordinance, section 1500.4.1, which talks about the requirements for a minor development. As I explained what the requirements are to fall within minor development, that section actually is the requirements that you have to meet as part of a minor development. There's also, one of the things that we added was about field testing. We wanted to make sure, so we amended the field testing section in order to require field testing for all stormwater BMPs within a site before and after construction. Because we want to make sure that before and during construction. So before what they call stormwater BMP, a best management practice, so such as a basin, a rain garden, an underground seepage bed, before one of them would be installed, the contractor would have to excavate to the bottom of that system, and an infiltration test would be conducted in order to ensure that where that system is being placed, the infiltration rates are compatible to what was originally designed for, so that the system functions the way it was designed. A lot of times in construction, as much as we try to regulate where the contractor is allowed to move his equipment, there's always times when they drive over areas that are designated for infiltration. And the whole point is not to compact the ground in that area. So we want to be sure that once the system is excavated down to where it needs to be, we want to make sure it's going to actually infiltrate and function the way it was designed. So that's one of the items that were added back in. We also had, we amended the one section related to the precipitation so that there is what they call a precipitation adjustment factor. Basically, that's to account for future increase in rainfall amounts. So it's actually a percentage that is tacked on to the current NOAA rainfall data that the city has. You do it's like, I forget the exact percentage, but there's a percentage tacked on like 5% of an increase to that rainfall amount, so that it accounts for future heavier rainfall amounts. Because as we all know, as time goes on, it seems like rainfall amounts are getting larger and larger. So this will at least help account for some of that future rainfall amount instead of just designing for today. And then one of the new sections that I had noted was on-site retention volume. That was something that was noted both in the New Jersey Future as well as by the Watershed Institute. It's a requirement that the state is planning on trying to push more and more for a lot of the new ordinances that are coming about. And basically what that means is that for the sites, 1.25 inches of rainfall that occurs in 2 hours, that volume has to be held on site and retained, so kept on site until it physically drains back into the soil, until it infiltrates back into the soil. So that's what your seepage beds do. That's what rain gardens are designed to do. Even with the driveways, as everybody knows, there's a lot of driveways in town that are porous pavement. That's exactly what all of them are really meant to do. It's on-site retention. It's to retain the runoff on-site and have it naturally infiltrate back into the ground. So that's a new section to this ordinance. And then we amended the section for, okay, we spoke about that one. And then we also, we added to the ordinance to specify the requirements for submission of a site development stormwater plan for a minor development. So what the requirements would be when you have to make a submission for a minor development, what all the requirements would be. We have a new section related to that. And we amended to include the submission of an annual report to the city. So as part of the new MS4 requirements, the state is requiring that any property owner or stormwater BMP owner, that they are to do, I believe it's actually now twice a year, they're supposed to do an inspection of their on-site stormwater management features. And those inspections are supposed to be reported, and that are basically a form would be completed that would be provided by the city. And the property owner would complete that form, and that form would be submitted to the city on, like I say, a biannual basis. And those reports get included in the city's annual stormwater report that is submitted to the state, so that the state can see that the city is maintaining all of their stormwater BMPs throughout the city. So that is a new requirement that was added into this ordinance. At this point, I believe that is all of the major amendments that have taken place to the ordinance.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and I have to say, I'm pleased with how this has evolved. We've had a lot of conversations about this, and stormwater is a huge concern. We talk about it all the time. We wanted to find a way to include minor development in the ordinance. We did look at a couple of examples. Princeton has what I would describe as something that is very intensive and very requires a lot of support and manpower to kind of inspect twice a year and maintain, and a lot of their stormwater sanitation measures will travel with the property, right? So deed restricted. So, you know, we're trying to find a middle ground and yet still have some fairly strict and comprehensive attention in all categories. And maybe just by way of example, say somebody wanted to build a deck on their property that was 20 by 20, which is 400 square feet. What would that process look like? Just kind of walk us through it, just for example's sake.
So because it'd be 400 square feet, that would fall within the minor development. And so there are a very specific set of requirements, such as the retention, the on-site retention volume, rate control. And so you would have to demonstrate that so you would end up having to install a stormwater BMP, such as a rain guard or an infiltration or a seepage bed, I should say, or what a lot of applicants have now started installing is their driveways. They're using permeable pavers or porous asphalt for the driveways, and they're putting 12 to 24 inch thick stone beds underneath that capture the water. So basically what you would just have to demonstrate is that the runoff from that deck area that you're proposing, that with the stormwater BMP that you're proposing, that your runoff in the post-development is equal to or less than in the pre-development. And so there would be an application for that. And
It's fair to say that anything you do in the city now is going to require you to really think about how serious you are about doing that, and in terms of what you're going to need to do complete the BMP, which is best management practice, right?
correct. And like I said, there's several viable options that many have used, and that, like I said, permeable pavers, the porous asphalt. So they do that for the driveway. So we've had situations where it was just a new driveway being installed, and the new driveway was large enough that it actually met the threshold for stormwater management. So they just made their whole driveway the porous pavers or the porous asphalt. And so they were able to meet the requirement and still got their driveway. They were able to do it all with the construction of just that driveway. Rain gardens is another feature. The only thing you have to keep in mind with that is once a rain garden is installed, it is a permanent feature to the lot. So it's not one like if you get tired of a garden in the future, you can't remove it.
And just correspondingly, this is gonna require the city to increase, kind of staffing hours at some point. That we're gonna be talking more about the MS4 Tier A permit, later in the year when we talk about personnel and the need to increase, oversight here in the city. It's a lot, for the staff to go out and do these inspections twice a year, even on single-family properties. We have a number of single-family properties that have, systems, that have to be inspected. So, with increased regulation, obviously comes a corresponding need to provide support in terms of resources, personnel, that kind of thing. So, are there any questions from the council about the ordinance?
One, if you could explain a little bit about two things. One was about if a property owner cannot do something on their property, they pay a fee, and then that goes to the city to stormwater management.
To assist with a regional stormwater management system.
Oh.
So one that would either be under control by the city. So what they refer to a regional, so a lot of times you have a basin that takes not just maybe one development or a few homes, but it will take an entire portion of a municipality. And so it's those types of systems, which usually is the regional, that's what the mitigations to go to. But at the same time, it can also help with any of the city's stormwater BMPs or features that may be in and around throughout the city.
So at this point, are there fees connected? Are there fees connected to applications yet for this and for enforcement? And will they be structured in a way that hopefully the fees to do these will pay for the professional fees that go with this, as we have done with planning and zoning board?
If the fees have been talked about, I was not part of that discussion. So at the current moment, I'm not aware of any fees associated with this. That I believe is just a discussion that still needs to take place.
And second question is, does this handle sheet flow at all from a neighbor's house where water trespasses onto someone else's property? Does that trigger? I know this is about new disturbances, but how do we handle?
So the only items that would need to be handled or controlled, I should say, is the new impervious that would be getting installed on that specific lot. If you have a situation where you have off-site runoff that is flowing through a property, it does not need to be controlled. It just needs to be conveyed properly through the site. If that makes sense.
And that's if there's no work done. I'm just talking about, there may be existing properties who are downhill and are prone to get sheet flow or runoff onto the property that's uncontrolled.
If there's no work currently being done, then there would be no requirements that would have to be met. No.
Good. So if the schedule goes the way I'd like it to go, we heard the planning board meeting in September and second reading public hearing will be scheduled for September 19th. Cindy, we can schedule it for that, and if we need to carry it because the planning board doesn't have a quorum,
then you just make that motion, somebody would make that motion at the September 19th session to carry it to the October session.
Good.
So the next step is, pardon me, in here is, we already introduced this, correct? And so are we going to proceed now? And
yeah, this was just, Councilor
No
Kaminsky.
hearing. I don't know if anybody has any questions in the audience at all.
Well, we have a public hearing,
At the end.
and certainly, if anybody wants to,
right. So that's what I thought we were going to do. But so the planning board won't see this until it's introduced.
We've already introduced it.
Yeah.
So the next step will be for this to go to the planning board.
Okay, so
and
that's
then
been
for
it.
their review, Doug will explain it all again. And then we will back to the council for consideration for adoption.
And you said the planning board is on the 19th.
Is on the 18th.
18th.
There's a potential quorum issue. So if the planning board does not meet because of the quorum issue, then we will, I'll just let everybody know now kind of what that looks like in a second. Planning board is not able to meet on the 18th. I will seek to carry this on the 19th to the council meeting on the 17th of October. So the planning board on the 16th has a meeting on the 16th of October when it could review this if it can't meet in September, and then we would take it up at the council meeting the next evening. Okay. Doug, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Just a follow-up question. I'm concerned that everyone knows what the process is here. Is that if the planning board cannot do this on the day before our next meeting, then there's no action we're going to take.
Well, the action would be, we would have to carry it.
Yeah, that's the only action.
Right.
Because they're not going to do it in one day.
Well, the planning board has to review it, right? And they have to, if there's any concern at the planning board level, for example, then we would carry it until such points have been addressed. Okay. Right, moving on, lead paint certification updates. So we're gonna have a brief discussion. Lindsay is going to tell us a little bit about a potential contract with LEW Environmental for lead testing rental properties in the city. So can we pass the mic down to Lindsay?
The requirement for rental properties to be tested for lead paint went into effect in July. And there have been a couple of different municipalities local that I've spoken with that have contracted with Blue Environmental to help them process the lead certification results.
I'm
And-
sorry, Lindsay, excuse me, if you could, one person, if you'd like to speak, please go up to into the other room. For everybody to hear what's happening. Thank you. Lindsay?
And Lou has been helping them to also submit the results to the DCA, which is one of the requirements that we now have to meet. Our current process is landlords submit their lead results to me every which way. And it's a bit hard to manage because we have to track them down for payment, we have to track them down to give them their compliance certificate, we have to submit the results to the DCA, and we have to track it for whether it's going to be good forever, for 2 years, for 3 years, and they expire every month. So it's a very labor-intensive process. The proposed contract with Lou, there's no fee to the municipality, and in exchange for being kind of designated the city's designated lead inspection firm, they will handle all of the submission of the results to the DCA, and they'll also manage all of the expirations in a portal that we always have access to. It would take a big load off of our office, and I don't really see any downside in contracting with them, especially because other municipalities local to us have already done it and they haven't had any complaints. Basically, how it would work is the homeowner, the property owner still has the choice to use any lead inspector to do their inspection. It's not like they're forced to use our guy, but Lou would offer a flat rate inspection fee that would include their inspection fee, the DCA required state fee, as well as any municipal fee that we would want to include. They would collect all of the money and submit the DCA fee for us to submit to them on a monthly basis. So that's pretty much how it would go.
How many rentals are we worried about with this that are actually this testing is going on?
So it's required of every rental. We probably have, of the ones that we have registered, we probably have about a third that have submitted this testing already.
And just as a rough estimate, can you let us know how much time per week you think this is taking up for you?
It's significant. In addition to processing all of the landlord, which takes probably about an hour per application, this is probably another half hour. And it's going to be on a rolling basis, whereas landlord hopefully will be a little more contained in the first 3 months of the year. This is going to be continual throughout the year.
And my last question, all the information that they would be collecting, you said there's a portal that you guys would have access, if people had questions about, you could easily access those materials.
Yes.
We have approximately 276 landlord applications and I think 46 or 47 short-term rentals. Most of the short-term rentals are less than 180 days, so they don't need to do this, but landlords do, all of them do. We're down to 25 who have not filed.
And the contract that they're proposing, how long the term is that?
We didn't discuss the term, when I was talking with the owner, but I would consider maybe if we could do it for the next 3 months till the end of the year and then consider renewing it in January for a year.
Thanks.
And that would be done just by resolution at the September 19th meeting.
Correct.
Sounds good to me.
It's a win-win, because, you know, if you think about just 30 minutes per application, but then you have to think about, now you gotta go in and manually look for everybody whose lead has expired, that's a heavy load. So this would be, and as part of this, we would have to amend our fee schedule. Because right now we're charging $100 for us to do all of this, and people are like, well, I'm paying somebody, you know, to actually do the test, why do I have to pay you $100? Well, because we have to go in and pull that information and then upload it to the state, and $100 previously probably was not enough, but I think what we should do is go with Lou, and then the next couple of months, kind of take a look at is it really taking of our time, and amend the fee schedule accordingly. Maybe it'll be less.
Do we have a CRM system at all in the city? Customer Relations Management?
No, unfortunately, every department uses kind of a different thing. You have the tax collector and finance who are using Edmunds. You have the tax assessor who's using a new BRT, which is a terrible system, but that's what the county picked. And then we kind of manage our things using Excel. SDL we use, and that is like for our online portal, but there's no way to easily extract that data and use that to send out a mass email or to send out a mass mailing. We are really always creating our own.
We should think about that going forward. That may make a little bit, I'm not sure how much it costs, but
Typically, CRMs are very large projects.
If you just take the simple example that Cindy just mentioned, you have the tax assessor that looks at it as a customer is one thing. You have, you know, the landlord is a different animal. Each department, each entity within the organization tends to look at differently, define customer differently. So there are software packages that do that. I don't know how small they scale. My guess is probably not very small because they tend to be for large complex organizations. So that's like what, like you think like Salesforce does, right? And that's a really big provider. So, and they tend to be, because they're so flexible, they tend to be relatively, labor intensive on the administrative end, because you're always looking at parameters and configuration and, you know, yeah, it's complicated. It's, yeah,
Yeah,
it
we
is.
had one where I worked and, it was, had many more than 4,000 people on it. So I just was wondering if there was a system that could be scaled down that could pull a report. You can identify certain fields to, like you are in Excel. I'm not thinking about, you know, having the court do it or the police department, just to manage all of the reports that the officers, that direction, you guys do on a regular basis. And it's a little bit more sophisticated than an Excel sheet, but if you, you know.
Right, we actually had taken a look at some of these things back when we were doing dog licensing, trying to figure that out. And it just, there was no cost benefit to doing it. It was just such an outrageous price to purchase that software system to manage 300 dog licenses or, you know, 276 landlord. It just, and nothing integrated.
Right.
So that's why we've reverted to using Excel. And it seems to, you know, we can do a mail merge, we can do a lot with that, so.
Moving on, we're gonna talk about food license requirements. So, Cindy, this is back to you guys. Is it Lynn?
I have.
You had your turn, okay?
Yeah, your turn.
So, recently we have more, food truck vendors coming into our community for different events. You see them at the Lambertville station, you see them across the street, and people are doing that sometimes even for a party. They're having a food truck. Well, they have to be licensed. And so that requires an inspection from the county, it requires an inspection from the fire department, depending on how they heat the food. So, this brought up different categories for us, and if you actually take a look at what is in the meeting folder, we had to amend some of the definitions. So you'll see that you have a food truck and you have a mobile vendor, because maybe they're operating and they don't have a food truck, but they have a table and they're selling their wares there. So we tried to take what we had existing and update it so that it would be more in line with what we're doing today. So we have food truck vendors, the price was $95 for 3 days. Maybe they'd be here, but it had to be 3 consecutive days. So maybe they'd be here for Shad Festival, but maybe they wouldn't be here the rest of the year. Or the Lambertville station may have them maybe once a month. So that meant $95 every time they went to the Lambertville station. So we're trying to figure out a way to better define this, to help us with food categories, because depending on the category you're in, it tells you whether you have to have the ServSafe license to actually give the food. So we went through and Lindsay and I tried to amend this using some of the criteria we had from the County Board of Health. And, you know, you'll see new language, you'll see we took out old language, and basically we revised the whole risk type. Instead of doing category 1, we did risk type 1, because that's what kicks in the fee, that's what kicks in the requirement for inspections, and then it also would help us address the food trucks or the mobile trucks. So that's what you'll see when you look at it, that's what we tried to do. Does that make sense? Lindsay, did I leave anything out?
So if it's a multiple event, aren't they inspected every morning or every day after they set up before they sell?
No, not always.
Okay.
Typically, that's up to the county to do.
Yeah.
And so what we do is prior to, and the county has redefined their food trucks events as well. So it seems that once the county inspects a food truck, they don't need to be re-inspected for a certain term.
But the fire.
But the fire does.
inspection does occur
Every
every time the truck moves.
Moves.
You said
Yeah.
there's a risk that something could go loose and become dangerous.
But that's actually separate from the food license. So that's why you won't see the flyer addressed in that.
Okay.
So that's why we're proposing some of these changes so we can meet with current need, maybe be a little bit more friendly to people who are coming into our community. And also, the late fees, you'll see that we, amend them a little bit, because to be honest, it takes a lot of time to do this. And, we're into September now, and we're still chasing one company. We're down to one company, and that expired May 31st. So it takes a lot, there's a lot of communications, mailings and phone calls and emails that go out. And, we honestly could be spending our time doing other things.
Lead paint certifications.
Yay.
Thank
Looking for more grants.
That's right, looking for more grants, that's a better answer. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on. So we've had a proposal to look at potentially doing a bike rental program here in the city. Big Bear Gear out on River Road has been interested in potentially, starting a pilot program in Lambertville for something like a city bike program in a major city, right? Where you have, they would start with maybe a dozen bikes somewhere at a rack in the city, and there would be an app that you could use to rent the bike, unlock it, and then return to that spot. So I've gone back and forth with Michael Ehrenreich since about, I think, the first email for back, I think in March. So there's been a lot of questions back and forth about kind of where such a program, where we might host such a program, if we were willing to host it, questions about insurance, all kinds of questions. And I just wanted to take the council's temperature on, potentially looking at this seriously. We haven't really had a conversation about it, but I think it's an interesting proposal. Certainly, biking in Lambertville I do it every day, except in the dead of winter. Big proponent of fewer cars and more pedestrians and more bicyclists. And so, you've all probably read the proposal, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But, I'll start by saying that I think it's I personally think it's a good idea. I have not been able to kind of find a space in, out in the city that I've locked into in terms of where this might be well suited. We talked about potentially looking at the parks, Cavallo Park or the Cherry Street Park. I think the idea would be to put something sort of more centrally located, at least initially, so that people could actually see the bikes and want to ride them. So, one of the questions that we would have to consider is where could we put a rack or two to get such a program up and running, whether it was 6 bikes in 2 locations or 12 bikes in 1 location. So just wanted to open this up to some thoughts from the council and sort of see where it goes.
Happy to start. I think it's an interesting idea. I don't really see any downside to it. They're the ones doing all the infrastructure and paying for the bikes, and they just need a place for a bike rack. So I would hope that we could find something for that. I know that, I don't know if we have any space in the North Union parking lot. If that would be a viable spot, I wouldn't want to take any parking spaces, but I don't know if there's any extra space behind the benches or anything. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. And it seems like they are getting insurance for that too, which is good. So if someone gets hurt, coverage for that too. So I like it.
Yeah, maybe at either end of town might be more appropriate than the middle. I don't know, especially for people who want to get on the tow path. But bikes are good, scooters, motorized scooters, whole different story. But bikes, it might be a great alternative for people who don't know, tourists who come to town on a bike, don't know how to get one, or I'm not quite sure how all this is working.
Well, so
I'm not gonna ask.
Yeah, well, no, I think.
They'd have to go with the Big Bear, pay.
No,
They
it's an
just
app,
do
no
it right
problem.
there, they put on an app,
Yeah,
get
that's
the thing, and
go to the bike,
Cell
you
phone.
check in on the app,
Oh,
and
good.
then you're off.
Hopefully, you know, we just have to be keeping an eye on the bikes too.
And if the
for-
bike doesn't
for
come
them.
back, it's their.
Right,
Yeah.
if the bike doesn't
Yeah.
come back, the bike is vandalized, it's not our,
Right, all we're doing is committing to offering bike
right,
racks. no
yeah,
recreation.
I just like to do it where there's a lot of room.
Yeah.
You know,
Have they, excuse me, have they contacted, Lambertville Station, Lambertville House?
I asked them to contact Lambertville Station, and I'd have to look back through the emails, because initially, I talked to Marion Borge at the Parks and Rec, and we had some conversations about what this might look like in Cavallo Park or Cherry Street Park, and, we had some conversation, and I went back to Michael at Big Bear and said, I like this idea, but if you really want something central, maybe you check in at the Lambertville Station, and I don't know whether they did, but he came back to me now in August, several months later, and, sort of expressed his interest again, and they've been specifically asking if you follow up with Lambertville Station.
And these bikes would be in these racks for weeks?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they would have bikes in the racks all the time.
Yeah, there'd be a dozen, they would start with a dozen bikes to see how the program, would just be a rollout of a temporary program with a dozen bikes. And the bikes would be returned at the same rack, and they're just kind of locked at the rack by the app, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems that, to me, that, well, I'm not against it, but.
but are you for it?
I gotta think that, and as far as, heads on beds, which is term hotels use for how much the income generates. It would seem that if it was connected to an existing hotel use, rather than just have people drive up, and I'm not quite sure how functionality, how it would work functionally, but it would seem that to me, that people who live in town and have bikes, they have bikes. And they would market basically to people that are visiting and or staying overnight. So I don't know how much the city should get involved at this point with them. I don't know if they have a business plan that everybody's seen. I mean, there were so many, you build it and they will come is an very old way to grow a business. So Bridge Street has the majority of hotel rooms in the city, I would say, within one block of each other, 2 blocks. I would think that if we're going to do anything, it should be so associated, so people that are in those 2 hotels can have access to the bikes. And the only places that we have room is on the corner where our little parkette is. And I don't know. There's a lot that goes on in that spot now that we have no control over, but people tend to use it the way it's just to use it, so.
Well, maybe to Councilman Kaminsky's point, maybe we go back and sort of get a better understanding of what the program is here. They also operate a tubing operation out of Frenchtown. So they've already worked with the state, they've worked with kind of local municipalities, and it would seem perfectly reasonable that, for example, we might allow them to have a bike rack at Cherry Street Park and one at Cavallo Park, and it's marketed for visitors who want to do a loop up to Stockton on the towpath, right? So maybe it's not necessarily about riding in town, but maybe it's about taking advantage of the towpath, right? So I'm going to follow up, and certainly it seems like there's enough interest here. If the council would like, maybe I could invite Michael to the October meeting or provide a little bit more information if there are specific questions.
Well, I'm also thinking that if he already has a relationship with the parks, New Jersey State Parks, there is a really big one out here that runs the full length of the city.
We talked about that, and there's an issue in terms of space along the towpath with bikes, right? I mean, in terms of like putting 12 bikes somewhere along the towpath.
State Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can he's a business person, we can kind of help give him some suggestions, but let him you know, develop this, see what he, you know, do, and then we can accommodate whatever he's able to do. You know, I don't know that it's not our program, it's his program. And, you know, I appreciate his ingenuity, want to get more people on bikes, riding bikes. So let's see what he comes back with. We don't have to.
Yeah, I agree. I would think that, you know, as the operator, he would want to have placement of the racks, you know, to optimize, you know, accessibility, right? And it's kind of interesting that he just wants to say, just tell me where I can put it. But the other thing is if he goes to, say he went to the Lambertville station, well, they're gonna charge him, right? So right now, he's not paying for rental space for his racks because he does it on his own property. But I think he's looking for a way to transfer that and not increase his cost, which is understandable. But at the same time, I don't know that, I think it's a good idea. I just don't know what we would be able, I'm not even saying we could, but I don't know what we would be able to offer that would really kind of make it something that people would know about, find, you know, and take advantage of, you know?
Yeah, now that we are responsibility.
Right,
we
and I
talk
don't think,
about
right,
the
and
space,
yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, we do have an example of someone who tried that and it failed. So I would be cautious, but we haven't really seen that much. You know, it would be great to talk to him, see what his thoughts are on it, and you know, how it's going to work and what impact it'll have on emergency services in town for people who don't know how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
All right, I think I have enough feedback here to make some decisions and move on. Oh, wait, there are a couple of announcements in here on my agenda. I'm just gonna run through these and then we'll get back to the public discussion items. Porch Fest, road closure is gonna be Sunday, October 13th, Coriel Street from North Union to George Street, 1 to 5. The date of Porch Fest has been moved from Saturday the 12th to Sunday the 13th.
We have to vote on this request.
We will do this at the September 19th meeting.
Oh.
Right, this is just kind of an FYI for everybody.
Gotcha.
Trick or treating, Thursday, October 31st. The resolution to the road closure will be voted on at the next meeting. We have a Halloween parade again this year. Thank you very much to Bronwyn Bird and the Bird House for organizing that Saturday, October 26th. The house tour is on the 27th. We will move into our last 3 items of discussion. So a resident wrote to me last month to highlight a program called the Yellow Bandana Program. This is a program that's operational in some cities, I guess out west, and certainly in Vancouver. And it's a fairly straightforward program whereby a municipality encourages owners, completely voluntary, of dogs who may have some reactive behavior to wear a yellow bandana. And it's a visual signal for other pedestrians and other dog owners to be aware that the dog that's coming down the street with the yellow bandana has some reactive qualities, and you might want to just be mindful and not pet the dog or let your dog get too near it. And so my dog would be the first member of the program. As many of you who have dogs know, he has a success rate of friendliness of about 75%, which is not enough. So, talk to Lindsay about this. I think this would be a fairly straightforward thing to give a try. This, it feels like, pretty straightforward, just educational, offering people some yellow ribbon or yellow bandana. When I'm out with my dog, if I've got a yellow bandana on him, I can say, this is because, he's gonna bite your leg or whatever, right? He's never bitten anybody. He's never bitten anybody that we know of.
I think there are several people I could volunteer to wear them for us.
Anyway, does everybody think it's not a bad idea? I think it's a good idea. And Lindsay said she would take the lead on it.
Well, it seems like we have.
It's all about heads on beds. Heads on beds with yellow beds.
we do have a database of licenses, so.
There's a good dog
I
database.
just cross the street when I see the elephant, and I
That's
like
right.
that, cause I always cross the street. 'Cause, you never know when dog looks at another dog cross, I do.
Yeah.
All right, but I'm not gonna talk.
Good, so, Lindsay and I will kind of take it from here. The only thing that I'm sure it's not very expensive. What's that?
We should have special ones made up, to say certain things.
Think of it with notches on them for every button, right? Oy vey. Keep away. All right, before we move into before we move into the cannabis retail hours, I'm gonna just jump to the stop sign at York and North Franklin Street, because I hope that will be a fairly short conversation
Thank
as well.
goodness, that is one heck of an intersection.
Yeah, so, Lieutenant Brown and I talked about this. Certainly, I've spent a lot of time out there recently on the job, with the North Franklin Street job. And anybody who's ever driven through that intersection, it feels like a weird intersection, because if you're trying to bypass North Main Street, the light and everything else, there's a lot of traffic through that intersection. And we were out there and we just thought this should be a great place for a four-way stop. So I wanted
Is
to-
there any stop signs?
There are.
Yeah, there,
On,
yeah.
on the
North
east and
Franklin.
west
Right.
side?
Yeah.
Franklin.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Franklin.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
Cause you can see going up the hill.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great.
All right, so it sounds like we're generally okay with that, so, be prepared to, we'll introduce an ordinance, to do that, probably September 19th meeting. To create a four-way stop there, also.
And part, and if I might say, part of that should include restriping of the corners so people don't park where they're not supposed to park, because you cannot see the intersection when you pull up, because cars are parked really close to them.
The intersections on North Franklin Street are due to be, that's the last part of the punch list. They're restriping, I think, next Friday, if I remember, there have been many emails about the punch list. And the restriping, they've already done some restriping, but they need to do the crosswalks, they need to do front of Grants Alley, and a couple of places where they need to do, so that should all be done next week. And I'll also, I don't remember if we talked about this at a council meeting, but there have been some concerns about speed on Stutterford Street. We conducted a speed study a month or so ago and found that up near West Amwell, the speeds are actually okay. But there have been a number of conversations I've had with residents who are concerned about speed coming down Stutterford Street. I've talked to a couple of residents about, what we could do there. The speed bumps aren't practical because of the slope. I don't know.
I don't know where you want to put them, because we have 3 up there now.
But yeah, but as you're coming down and the grade changes where it's steeper, there are certain inclines where they can't put speed bumps because they actually become a hazard. If somebody hits them too fast, they can veer off and, kind of going into people's yards or whatever. The only thing that we talked to Lieutenant Brown about this for quite a while, we could consider putting four-way stops on a couple of those. The concern with the four-way stop is it certainly would allow for greater safety up there. But, if you're going up the hill and you have to stop, you're gonna, the houses nearest the hill, the stop sign are gonna hear the acceleration of cars and trucks. And so it's a little bit of a quandary.
I think we could, that's not here, obviously, but we could think about some kind of other visual things to start people to not speed. And maybe it's more messaging on the road bed, that type of thing.
Like the speed limit.
Well,
Flash or
something, it's
something,
like,
yeah.
I mean, there are other things you could do that would require some paint. And it is a wide street, and wide streets tend to have people go faster on them.
Yeah.
And you can see that downtown here too. I mean, York Street is like really, but then they have the hill, so it's tough to put stop signs going up the hill because you take your foot off the brake and you go backwards.
Yeah.
It's like-
But
there may be some.
Yeah, I mean, the painting idea is, it's not anything that we discussed. I mean, you could maybe paint slow or slow down, or, happy to do it, slow down, right?
Or if we want to put painted crosswalks in.
They do put
Sutherford itself to bring a visual in and, you know, that kind of thing.
Maybe we can take a look at 29, Route 29, where they, you know, we went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes and maybe incorporate some things that they did on what they called a road diet, which actually makes the road look smaller, so you go less of the speed.
The other, I mean,
Oh,
the road was,
you decrease the width.
and the road was recently paved, so it's smooth sailing, right? So that makes people go faster.
But we're considering it and we're thinking about it, and if anybody has any other ideas, let me know. And then the last item for discussion is the having a conversation around potentially extending to some degree the hours for the cannabis retail operations here in the city. So just to sort of for the public record, I had a letter from Union Chill on the 3rd of September, request for the extension of hours. It's addressed to all of us. They note that they've had their first anniversary on June 24th. They're very appreciative for the support and guidance of everyone in the city of Lambertville. They note that the current hours are for cannabis retailers are 9 to 7 Monday through Saturday and 10 to 5 on Sunday. Union Chill is suggesting that the hours be extended from 9 to 9 Monday through Saturday and 10 to 9 on Sundays. I mean, this is a number of beneficial, you know, items for the city, increased revenue, all kinds of things. Had a similar letter. I don't know if the council actually had a chance to see this. It came in late this afternoon from Baked by the River. You know, they're also interested in extending hours, and you know, they note that it wouldn't. They don't anticipate it would cause unprecedented traffic or disturbance to their residential neighbors. And they actually provided a list of 15 different businesses within 500 feet of Baked by the River that are open later than 7 p.m., including restaurants and shops and bars. So some of those are open as late as 10, 11, 12 a.m. And they also took time to go to 13 of the local businesses in the central business district who was in support of expanded hours for their particular dispensary. They provided a list of all of the businesses in support of expanded hours. So, you know, I think from my perspective, you know, now having had one Union Chill open for the better part of a year, and Baked by the River open since the fall, this was not a bad time to sort of consider, you know, this is something that the council would take a look at. I haven't spoken to any of the council members about this specifically, and you know, the times, if there was an extension of the times, we would decide what that would be. It wouldn't necessarily be to 9 o'clock. It could be a 1-hour extension on Sundays. I know that, for example, Union Chill said that they felt as though competing with other dispensaries in the area, the ones up at Flemington, and some of the other ones are open till 9. That even an hour on Sunday would make a big difference to the business because just of people's schedules on Sundays. So I'm just going to open this up to the council for some general thoughts, and we'll see where we go. And I would just note for everybody in the room that you know, if there was some decision or some consensus here, this would have to be an amendment to the cannabis ordinance.
When we originally set it, I was on the committee with Ward Sanders about cannabis, and I see some familiar faces from there. We have not had impact from the third one, and I think we should. Sunday, I think, is the easy one if we're going to extend something, because it does close at 5 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, personally, I would entertain about having the Sunday cut off late, put another hour or something on there, it's a period of time. But we haven't had the third one up and running, and I'm sure that they're apparently working on it now. Before we start changing the times, I think we should experience what comes with the third one that's opening up.
And just before you continue, also note that we had an application today for the 4th final license, a micro business in the C3 district down at the south part of town. So I don't know what'll happen with that, but I think I think our application for the planning board is ready to go. I don't know if that's been submitted to Crystal yet or where we are with that, but I will just note that we just today received a completed application for a retail.
Planning board received the application about a month ago. I don't know where they are in the mix, but we'll let you know.
And, you know, and although, you know, I'm in favor of using that zone as we had passed to enable someone to open in that area, you know, we don't yet know the impact on Wilson Street. We don't know the impact on Mount Hope Street. The entrance or exit, whatever it is, goes off of 29 down to that is, I think it's problematic, but that's what the planning board can deal with. So I'm,
If we could please not.
so I'm concerned about extending the hours without having to see their traffic study that I assume they're gonna have to do, because most of the cars that are going to be going down there are gonna be using Wilson Street. So, and Mount Hope perhaps, and South Union Street. So let's see how that impacts their neighborhood before we do a blanket extension of time. So I think Sunday's the easy one at this point. We want to extend the Sunday hour, but we still have two that haven't opened. I don't want to, I'm hesitant about blanket.
I agree about a blanket, because I think we have to look at these individual zones because, you know, the church, Big by the River on Church Street is really in a very different area than Union Chill. Union Chill has much more residential there, you know, so I think, I don't think a blanket approach is right because, you know, Church Street, I think, can handle a little bit later than the more residential areas. I was impressed that Big by the River has already gone through and talked to a lot of people. I think if Union Chill wants to extend their hours, I appreciate the letter they sent to us. I think the next thing they should be doing is talking to the neighbors and making sure, you know, they know that this is what the proposal is and that they're interested in, you know, I know that they've been trying to, you know, maintain good communication with the neighbors, and that's, I think, the next step that I would hope they would do is reach out to the neighbors to find out what their thoughts are. I think that'd be a good idea, because if there are problems, the neighbors are gonna be able to let the Union Chill people know that. And so I agree, I think Sunday is something that could be considered, but I really think that they need to do a little bit more work talking to the residents there. I know I see a lot of people who came tonight who live in that area who are concerned, and I think we need to make sure that this isn't gonna affect their living in their homes.
Yeah, especially on Elm Street.
Right, we did get there was an
And if
email.
there, since this is a work session, since, if there are currently problems on, I read that letter as well today. You know, if there's concern by people on Coriel's, thank you so much. Elm Street, sorry about that. On Elm Street that are concerned now with the present operation about speeding and whatever the concern is, then that gets addressed. We should address that. Conversations with Lieutenant Brown and neighbors and see, you know, if there's something we can do to alleviate the speed that people are using and on that. And I know in the beginning, they had mentioned that they were going to promote a way in and way out and shy away from that street and direct people to Cherry, and then since Union Street is so wide, to Union. I think we have to, I mean, that's one that we really have to look into. And since the public is aware of what happens on Elm Street, I think we have to look into that problem before we do anything. And if there's something we can do to mitigate how it's currently being run, fine. And we all went into this knowing that it was going to be impacting a neighborhood, and if it's impacting a neighborhood negatively, we have to deal with that sooner before we start changing hours. So,
Just before you go,
I'm done.
I did have a long conversation with Lieutenant Brown about Elm Street, and I just wanted to check in with him. He has not reported any speed incidents or any accidents or anything of that nature on Elm Street. in the last year. So that doesn't discount kind of what residents may feel, but in terms of, you know, statistics and the police department, we had that conversation, and he's not had any complaints in the last 6 months about Elm Street traffic. Certainly, I have fielded some questions about parking from a couple of residents recently, and you know, I've had a conversation with Union Chill. You know, I'll be candid is the wrong word in a public meeting. You know, there is a Minnow and Roscoe has moved down to the same building as Union Chill. The parking lot back there has a lot more cars in it from day to day. I have had a conversation with Union Chill. They are looking to rent some spaces for their employees off-site to lessen the impact of kind of parking in the lot. I haven't really gone over there to look at what the situation is from day to day, but it seems to be evolving a little bit now that there's a fairly significant new tenant in the building. So I'll just say that in my conversations with Union Chill, they've been very engaged about parking, and you know, I can continue to have those conversations, and I would encourage, you know, for residents, you know, I do live right there, and I do go around the corner quite a bit. Lindsay lives on Elm Street, and I'm happy to have you kind of you know, repeat what you said to me today. So I mean, there are some concerns about certainly the volume of cars, but from my personal kind of view of the thing, I haven't seen any major instances of issues. Do you want to add anything as a resident of Elm Street, Lindsay?
Oh, commit.
Well, I'm kind of in the middle of Elm, so I'm not as directly affected as people that are right on the corner from Canyon. But I do notice that people who are visiting Union Chill, they flashing park where they're not supposed to. They're constantly parking on the street rather than in the lot where they're supposed to park. And there is some signage that kind of suggests that there's off-street parking, but it's not very clear and it's not followed very often.
So I've asked them to add a sign to the one-way, right below the one-way sign that directs people into the parking lot. That's a clear indication for Union Chill, please park here, right? So I think we can make some improvements in terms of signage and continue to have conversations with them.
One resident indicated that the free parking sign was a good thing, like that really got more people to go in the back, so maybe they could add that free parking as well.
Well, and maybe too, in our enforcement, you know, folks that are just pulling over and putting on their flashers, going there, should be advised that that is not appropriate. You know, I agree with you, Councilman Stegman, that to look at making any changes before we have the full core program up and running is kind of ill-advised. Because we're still working out the kinks, and right now we're all talking about anecdotal evidence of what we've all done, and there are folks here who live with it all the time that I'd rather, you know, hear from people and notice it, and because, you know, I don't care as much about tax, a little extra tax revenue and ours as I do about, you know, the quality of life for everybody, you know, for folks who want to shop there and folks who don't want to shop there. I mean, I think we owe it to both sides to take a full look when everything is up and running, because right now it's just, you know, it's not a fully vetted program, and we're just talking about what a couple of folks have observed. So I don't feel like fully informed.
Yeah,
to be able to say
flasher is
something.
what's
It's
called.
a great industry for us,
Yeah.
you know, it brings a lot of, you know, it helps with tourism, and it's on the best people come here that they can also shop at these shops like, but I think we need to, in terms of making changes to the program that we set up, let's wait and see how it all works with 4 of them.
I think that's a sound idea. You know, I've had conversations with Take by the River about other things that they want to do, and I've been pretty steadfast in saying I really want some time behind us in terms of evaluating everything. And you know, I think I'm more open to considering extended hours, but you know, hearing everybody here speak, I think that it's probably I would be interested to hear if everybody would at least consider like extending the Sunday hour till 6, for example. I mean, I think that would be a small, good step in the right direction, but you know, if the council doesn't want to do that, that's fine too. But I do think it's good to have more behind us, right? Have all 4 of them sort of up and running before we consider making any changes. So
I don't disagree about that. And I don't know, you know, if Sunday is the only option to give people another hour, then.
well, I think it would be, you know, for me, I think it would be, I don't want to say good faith, but I mean, it would be something, right? And I think that from what I've heard, Sunday is, and you know, maybe we talk to the city attorney and say, you know, I don't know about this idea, I'm just sort of brainstorming here, but is it appropriate possibly to have different hours for different locations, right? I mean, the central business district is different than you know.
I'm hesitant only because it sets up maybe an unfair advantage to people. I think,
yeah, it's just an idea.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You know, based on the fact that the ice cream shop is open until, you know, 9 or 10 o'clock, right? I mean, you know, I want to be careful, but
I
I'm
don't
just trying
want
to
to throw
figure
out
out the box.
do anything until we actually have an opportunity to even hear from people.
Right.
You know, we haven't really heard from folks other than, you know, it's kind of came on the agenda, so, you know,
Yeah.
like even an hour on Sunday, like, let's hear from folks.
Yeah.
You know, first.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and yeah. So I have some ideas about Elm Street as we're all talking about it, about monitoring or taking some kind of survey, so to speak, you know, where, when you turn down Elm Street, where are you going? And we have to, you know, do some, just so we would have hard information, because getting people off of Elm Street to get there was a well-discussed topic, that Elm Street would not be the primary. And maybe a signage up at Cherry Street is something that can be done, you know, to direct people down, to go North Union, to go south on North Union Street, and then go on Elm Street to enter. Or, I know, and we, you know, it's an experiment, the parking lot, because you can't, you know, we changed how people enter and exit that. But it's only an entrance on Elm, off of Elm Street, and the other way is a 2-way in and out. So we just have to see holistically how, you know, how we can improve that to satisfy the residential area while helping the retails.
Right, and it's a great industry for us because, you know, a lot of the rest of the county, you know, these services aren't that available. So it's a great part of our tourism and, you know, we want it to work.
Yeah,
you know.
and
So,
we can certainly
awesome.
do a traffic study on Elm Street and monitor, count how many vehicles come through and give it a 2-week period, and then do the same thing for Wood Street, and see kind of what the difference is.
Well, even if we can get Union Chill, when they come to Union Chill, ask, you know, how they came into town. You know, we'll have some good information that way.
Okay. So it sounds like we're just gonna hold off on that for now. We'd love to hear from neighbors on this. Obviously, when we have, we're not quite there yet with public participation, but we will be in a minute. So I'm just gonna go through the rest of the announcements here. I'd like to note that we got a $40,000 grant from the county for our storm sewer video camera, which is amazing. Yes, thank you very much, Charlotte County Commissioners. So that's great. We just got notified of that this morning.
And I think that's the maximum you can get out of this.
Yeah, I think we got the complete list of who got
Yeah,
what, and
so-
they were up, I think $40,000 was the maximum, yeah. And just a personal note, I'll be on vacation out of the city from Wednesday, the 11th through the 17th. I'll be far away, so I will not be answering emails. Right to Council President Lambert or Cindy here, if you have any questions or concerns, and I'll try and catch up with everybody as soon as I get back. That's it. announcements, so,
Something I'm not asking people to wait.
do we have anything else for you, announcements, we're good? All
No,
right,
we're good.
All right, so we'll open this up to the public, the second public participation. Same rules apply, you have 3 minutes. So please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and your 3 minutes of uninterrupted
Susan
time.
Turkheimer, 207 North Union. A couple of things. The yellow van for the dogs, wonderful idea. You might want to consider using that as a fundraiser somehow, and going with the Alliance or somebody on that order. Being that I'm from a marketing background, that's where my brain goes. That was just one. And then on the bikes, which I think is a fun idea. On the weekends, I nearly miss getting killed at least once a weekend from day trippers. They don't know the rules of the canal, they're not wearing helmets, they don't have bells on their bicycles. I would suggest that they make sure there's helmets involved in this for everybody's safety, and that posted on these bike racks is a list of rules to be a good citizen and be a safe bike rider and not run over people, you know, especially when you're making that turn by the Nifty Bridge and you're supposed to walk your bike and you end up going. Okay, so just those 2 little comments. Now on to Union Chill. Everybody spoke of Elm Street. North Union is also huge. You live a little further down, Mayor, but where we are, they're parking backwards, they're parking double parking, they're parking and leaving their cars running. Very often, there's noisy cars. I mean, like those little tiny, you know, inner city kind of cars that are, and they have become a real pain. They don't respect the neighbors. They don't respect the neighborhood. I had one guy, I was sitting on my porch with 3 or 4 of the other neighbors. And I said, car's backwards and it's running. He goes, I'll be out in a minute. And I said, bet you I'd get a cop here in 30 seconds. And he moved his car. But that happens more often than not in the evening. During the day, it's pretty mellow around there. So to extend evening hours, people, and they, as Lindsay said, they park, they put on their blinkers on the corner on Elm and North Union, which also Mises is coming in and out of. I've had the front end of my car taken off by a truck from Mises. God knows what's gonna happen. They come in late too. They don't just come in during the day, the Nice trucks. They come in and they park in the back lot. So even, and I also feel that, and I understand the Sunday, like, let's, you know, show them a little bit, but, you know, what is it, give an inch, take a mile? I really would strongly feel that if we gave them anything, being that we have to change, what's the right word I'm looking for?
Circulation?
No, the
The
amendments.
yeah.
The ordinance, yes, the ordinance is the word I was looking for. We have to amend an ordinance that we do not do anything. And Steve, you and I were on the same traffic committee when they first opened, and we said there'd be about 40 cars an hour prior to their opening. Now I'm wondering what it actually is now. That would be an interesting number. So, pardon me?
You could wrap up.
That's pretty much wrapped up, but I am gonna work very hard not to have this place open any later than it is. And I would like speed bumps back. Thank you.
Just one thing about the bike school helmets, that's a great point that we have not with the bike helmets, and I think we should pass that on to them. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Jeff Tittle, 33 Wilson Street. Bike helmets are mandatory on adults. I just wanted to start off with talking about Wilson Street. You know, we've built 19 houses, or will be building 19 houses, and we've lost half the parking on the street already. And then you have the valet from there, so it's a narrow street. Everybody who built a house there has 2 cars, one in their driveway and one on the street, so there's no parking left. In fact, you can't even get to the yards and park there anymore. Anyway, I wanted to go back to, talked about bandanas, we talked about food trucks and software. We didn't talk about the stormwater ordinance. And that ordinance is gonna have a bigger impact than anything we're talking about today in this meeting. And I was hoping for a real discussion where you can get up and ask questions and we have a back and forth. I know it was that meeting a way ago, but so here I just start off with, how will the ordinance reduce flooding in town? Well, it's for new development, so it's not. How will it deal with a major flood like Ida? It can't. how will the ordinance deal with what's happening at Lambertville High School site? The steep slopes and rock outcrop, how are you gonna infiltrate water there? How is it gonna deal with redevelopment, even though we say it does, when you read the ordinance, it's all about what triggers it is taking basically open space or paving over land that's not paved. So I don't see the trigger to get a redevelopment when someone like Finkel's comes in or someone else. The other point is that other towns, when it comes to the minor, Montclair is 250 square feet, Solberry is 100 square feet. When we talk about a major, yes, it's better than it was, but we're still talking about in the central business district, a pretty large and intense development. One of the things that I thought we should have done is separate the ordinance from the hill, where we want to retain water back and do more to hold water. And then in town, where it's mostly developed, where you really need to try to get the water out of the neighborhood. I don't know how we're going to really do stream buffers on it, since most of our buffers are developed. But I just think that the point that I want to make is that this is a major ordinance for a town, and it doesn't do as much as we think it does. And we have a major development up on the hill that's going to have tremendous impacts. And I don't see this doing enough to deal with that major impact. And in fact, even though there is infiltration in here, it's not the amount of infiltration. So when you have a forested area, 3 inches of rainfall can be infiltrated. Under this ordinance, and I'm not against it, I think it's a major step forward by the state of New Jersey, 1.25 inches is not bad. So we're still going to have additional runoff coming off the mountain. And that'll be true in any other open space area. So I just wanted to end there, but I want another time to talk about parking, because we're giving out a lot of development in this town, especially on the south end, and there's no parking. And it's going to become a gridlock, and we're going to lose people from this town from it, and lose tourists.
Diane Bushel, 22 Elm Street. I just want to thank you for please considering residents of Elm Street and North Union for the extension of Union Chill hours. I live, if you don't know where 22 Elm Street is, I am the closest, I'm right on top of it. I've lived in my house for 20 years. The volume of traffic is beyond what I would have ever thought. And getting down Elm Street when you get home from work at 6:30 at night, people don't take turns if they're from out of town. People are speeding, they pull over, they don't park in the back lot, they pull up, it's the car running, or they park really close to the corner on Elm or on Union, and you can't, if you have to go out, you can't turn because you can't see. People do still come out and light up in their cars or whatever. It's what percentage of their customer base, and that's a whole, it's just the volume of people, and if the hours are extended, the quality of life on Elm Street. The weekends, we get the motorcycles in on a nice weekend. I wouldn't buy a residential home on Main Street, New Hope. I'm not against motorcycles, but it's a place where a lot of motorcycles go. Good for them, happy for them to have a good time, but it's not where I would put a private residence in a place that attracts motorcycles, etc. And if it's a rainy weekend, people pull up and idle, they pull up right next to my house and leave their car running to go in. I'll only be 10 minutes. It's just, I almost got run over again on the sidewalk. So a week and a half ago, thankfully I was not walking my dog, but as you know, the driveway is very wide. I came out of my house, I was halfway through the driveway, about halfway through the width of the driveway, and a car, she was a young woman, came flying around the corner into the driveway, missed me by about from here to that table, slammed on her brakes, I stopped, and then she kept going. So I would love a traffic study. I would love, while there haven't been official accidents, I've seen close calls. It just, the quality of the lives, and if it were to be extended on a Sunday, when I tell you, Sunday's my only day off work, and I look forward to 5 p.m. because I hear cars and people are coming and going. If I smell anything and it's a nice day, I close my windows, it just, it's there, they have, as you know, by your revenue numbers, 2% of what you're getting. Do the math as to the volume, whatever, take a guess as to what the average customer spends there, the volume of people. And they're doing great and I'm happy for them, but it's a commercial building in the middle of a residential neighborhood. You can't compare it to Church Street in business district. So please consider Elm Street people. Thank you.
Hi, Jessica Doris, Church Street and the River by the River. Just coming up to say that I think it's unreasonable to delay extending hours until the start date of the other proposed dispensaries in town. Del Vecchio's dispensary was approved 11 months before mine. And had the opportunity to start construction during that time period, had the opportunity to start construction this entire past year as well. And I don't think it's reasonable for the other businesses in town to have to run our businesses based on that delay and their timeline. What their timeline is their timeline, and also the hypothetical of another application in town that hasn't been approved yet. I think it's also unreasonable to consider all the different dispensaries in the different zones of town under the same category. I consider that unreasonable as well. We are the only small business landlord-owned dispensary in town. We've gotten, I'm proud to say, no complaints from local residents on Church Street or surrounding streets. We have really gone out of our way to work with the local community, and as someone that lives on Church Street, Mitchell's, the bar is open, and people are hanging out smoking cigarettes until like 10 o'clock at night, most nights. It's a good vibe. Like, people are walking around, there's noise, it's got like a nice city atmosphere to it, especially on the weekends. And I wanted to pass the sheet that I went around with to all the like listed businesses that I included in that email. And the hours that I spoke about with the local businesses were weekend hours. Friday, increasing the hours till 9, Saturday, increasing the hours to 9, Sunday, increasing the hours to 7 p.m. And honestly, all the local businesses thought it was absurd that I even have to come to the city council meeting and go through multiple meetings to try and get a change on this, because they just see it as a benefit to the local community to have my business as part of the central business district, bringing more customers into town, bringing a variety of different customers into town, and sending them to the restaurants around, sending them to the other businesses, giving them good recommendations. And the central business district businesses have been particularly hit hard by the closing of the bridge. And that's something that I have universally heard from all of the businesses in my surrounding area. And if we pass this ordinance to be able to expand my hours this fall, that could directly benefit the other businesses around me, and bring more commerce to Church Street later in the day that actually reflects the other businesses in my area more authentically. And so I don't want to be considered in the same category as you, Mitchell, because we don't have the same residential complaints that they're dealing with. I don't want to be considered in the same category as Jersey Girls Dispensary, because I'm not sure when they're going to be open. I walk by there every day. And so having our business have to wait on the hypothetical of that open date and the open date of the future one, honestly, we haven't had any disturbances. It's not been something that's been problematic. So I don't see why this would be a hard push, especially for this.
I think we should ask the city attorney if we can have different hours. I think that's important to whatever we're gonna do to know that answer. And as I said before, I'm impressed with the outreach that you've done with the neighbors there. That to me is a distinct difference than Union Chill. You guys have already done that legwork and reached out to those people. And I myself have talked to a lot of people on Church Street. My parents live on Church Street too, and I have not heard any complaints at all. So I think we should ask the city attorney about that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can spot zone times, open and close times, just because someone is in the central business district means they can stay open longer. And extending the hours of your business, how can we not then extend them for Jersey Girls, which isn't even open yet? So, I mean, you're both in the CBD, we just can't pick one in the CBD and say, oh, you can stay open, but you can't stay open, but when your competitor 3 blocks away is open at 9.
We're not saying that though, because they have the same, they would have the same benefits to Big Bad River. There's nobody
They're on
else
the
there.
same zone.
I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. The problem I have is We've got, 25 families that live right next to Union Chill, and they are gonna be negatively affected by the increase in the hours. And we don't have those same residential families by Jersey Girls or Big by the River. So I really think we need to look at this individually per neighborhood to see how it affects. And we need an answer from the
Talk to
attorney.
the attorney,
Right.
which I will
yeah.
do.
Yeah, we should do, yeah,
Yeah.
'cause there is the zone designation that would give some, kind of,
Flexibility
Yeah.
possibly.
yeah, exactly, thank you. Running out of words, but yeah, because it is a great business, and,
I'll have, let's just say, I'll have spoken to the city attorney by our, September 19th meeting. And, I'll report to the council before then, if I have that answer before then, but, we'll see what happens there. It's a good question to ask. Thank you. Councilman.
Excuse me. Dave Bird, 255 Brunswick Avenue, going back to the stormwater ordinance that was talked about again tonight. My recollection is when that ordinance had been brought up, there was a number of discussions about it. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe what the commitment was that there would be a conversation, all right, a meeting, a separate meeting. And then I think it got combined into this to let the people ask questions and be educated, because this is an impact on their, future property owners and the like. And, Doug did his thing, all right, but it didn't give the people an opportunity to ask the questions in front of council that said, well, maybe we need to look at that differently. Is it strong enough? Is it, what needs to be done? I don't think we got what we need to, and I would suggest that before this goes forward, all right, because there's not a bigger subject than stormwater, okay? And that ties into the 200 on the hill, all right? But we've got to have an opportunity to talk, all right? And it's great, we have 3 minutes up front, 3 minutes up back. There's a lot of knowledge sitting in this room.
Sean Ellis, 21 Belvedere Avenue. I just want to say that I completely agree that, Big by the River, who I think are model citizens in this domain and doing everything right and talking to their neighbors and, not getting complaints, they shouldn't be punished for Union Chill's inability to talk to their neighbors or work things out or control their clientele, in terms of parking and behaviors and stuff. So, I think that it should not be a blanket ordinance around the hours, because it really is unfair to them, and they're doing the right thing. But I did want to also talk about parking and, its relation to the stormwater ordinance and what Jeff was talking about on Wilson Street, the growing lack of parking and the valets and things that are really impacting that. There's on, different sides of town, there's a lot of parking that's mostly unused, and it's all impermeable surfaces, right? You have the Riverwalk parking, you have the all the vacant buildings that have been vacant for many years down by where Jersey Girls is, going to be going in, Lambert Lane area. You have, there's the CVS parking lot and other areas where it's just like empty almost all of the time. And the Catholic Church, right? That's another big one. I mean, these are impermeable surfaces that are barely used, barely add any value, maybe to the businesses that are there that, are in operation. But one thing that I would consider is, is there a way to work out some kind of deal or maybe impose a tax if, for these, impermeable surfaces that generate a lot of runoff, you know, and negotiate city parking there, or, you know, parking for, I mean, there would be great places to put the bikes, you know, tourists coming into town at the ends of town. They could go outside of Lambertville, they could go into Lambertville, and, you know, that's cars that are reduced, you know, we're reducing cars from going into the city if people are able to park in these areas. So I don't know, I look at these empty parking lots all the time, and I look at our parking problems, and there's gotta be a better solution. So I don't have one, but that might be a, you know, a step worth taking and talking about. So at any rate.
Anybody want to take on the parking question?
I know, it's absolutely.
No solutions either.
Okay, all right.
There's never enough parking. You're always one parking spot short.
And we certainly aren't allowed to tax impermeable surfaces like parking lots. If we have a stormwater utility, we could certainly assess a fee. So unfortunately, as we know, that there's not enough support here at the council level for that, but that would be one way that we could offset the impact of these large, you know, paid parking lots, and, you know, relative to stormwater management. Just had to get that in there while I had the opportunity. Sorry.
Is
Well,
there a
you
law
know,
that says that you can't
why
tax
does-
parking lots?
Well, they are taxed except for the
Why-
nonprofits.
Yeah, you can't
You
tax
can't tax
but-
nonprofits, but.
But, I mean, we can impose fees, can't we?
As part of
Without-
the stormwater utility, we could,
Only
yes.
as a stormwater utility.
Yeah.
Only.
I would have to double check the bill, but yes, I believe
I
that's
mean,
correct.
Well, we'd have to create, because you have to create.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it seems a little extreme.
Anyway, please.
Hi, John Towns, 14 Hancock. Couple of things. The stormwater management report that came out, I was a little disappointed I wasn't able to ask questions. Many of them would have been, you know, simply like, how are we paying for this? I'm sure you guys discussed that. Sorry, bad citizen. I haven't attended a whole bunch of meetings the last bunch of years, but where are we generating revenue from? Is this coming from grant from the state? I'm assuming taxes are gonna also supplement a majority of those things. Okay, well, it happens. It's the cost of doing business. Speaking of business, be careful with Union and Chill. You're opening up the city for potential liability. They were given a permit to open their shop. They have, limiting their hours, opens you up to liability because what's right down the street? Bell's Tavern. Don't put a block on Bell's Tavern hours. You don't put a block on liquor store down on South Union Street. So again, before you get us into trouble, hopefully the city attorney can address those issues. And again, I feel very bad for the citizens who are dealing with those things, and that's notify law enforcement. That's going to be your best bet. Take a picture of the offending car and the operator. I don't know. Forward that to law enforcement. You have to be careful. I'm kind of also disappointed. We spent more time talking about Union and Chill. We have about the 200 up on the hill. Maybe I'm jaded by that, but again, it's a big deal. At what point does the city council know that they can release the report of the meeting with the judge? That would be something all of us would be interested in. I realize there's certain things because some of the vendors involved, you have to not open yourself up for liability, but it is something we would like to know about. Interest of, you know, clarity and understanding where your positions are. And if we have the option to move the 200 throughout the whole town, maybe 10 up on our hill, fine, once the remediation is done up there. And then finally, who owned the dump? Back in the day when all this started. In the 30s and the 40s. And the 50s. I believe that was Lambertville City. So then, is the pollution that my house is affected by, as well as everybody else up on that hill, technically the city's liability?
Thank
Let me just take a couple of those. We can sit down. I'm happy to. So just in terms of the cannabis retail operations, so that was set by ordinance before businesses were allowed to begin. So they agreed to those times as part of the local ordinance. So there's no question of liability or them sort of taking any legal action against the city because that was one of the components that they agreed to when they began. Just in terms of stormwater management, you know, I'm happy to meet with anybody who wants to talk about this ordinance or stormwater management in general, but certainly we have ongoing costs. The stormwater control, the stormwater management ordinance here is going to cost the city more in terms of just oversight and not implementation, but kind of process. It's going to involve more escrow accounts for professional services to review applications. It's going to increase the inspection time on the construction office. So there will be an impact in terms of costs that will not be offset by any, unless to some degree, they're offset by fees. But I can't speak to kind of, it's a big question, right? So there's no grant funding here. This is just about sort of setting the rules and the process. And then the process is overseen by the city and its professionals. When the professionals are brought in, it's at the expense of the applicant. So we're not incurring costs there. The Hill, we just can't talk about it. It's confidential, contractual negotiation at the moment. We can't talk about it, and I don't know when we're going to be able to talk about it because we're in a discussion. Right? So it's not that we don't want to talk about it, and to some degree, it would be inadvisable to talk about it at the moment because nothing is resolved. We're in negotiations, right? So as important as it is to keep people informed about these things, we simply can't speak. We would be inadvisable to speak and probably go ahead. What's the word? What am I looking for here?
Inadvisable is the word.
Inadvisable. So there are lots of times when governing bodies have to know things that the public just can't know. And this is one of those moments in this process. And as soon as we're able to share information about it again, it wasn't on the agenda because we can't say anything. So pay attention. I know that people are watching, looking at the agendas. If you see it on the agenda, that's an indication that we're going to actually have something to say about it, or there's going to be a conversation. So until that time, I can't speak to how long or how fast this is going to go. But things are happening. We just can't talk about them. And then lastly, I don't really know the question about the dump. We've talked a little bit about this. I don't know that we ever really owned the dump. I don't know. It's a question for the city attorney. In terms of liability and responsibility, this is a very complicated question. And how had a conversation with the city attorney about this today. How far back, does liability go? If we never owned the land, do we have liability? If other people were dumping, is there a shared liability? What if there are no records, right? What if there's just this kind of, every 80-year-old in town knew that it was the dump? But there was no other way to kind of to memorialize that. So very, very complicated, and I don't have the answers. I don't know who owned the actual land in the 30s and 40s. I suppose we could, go up to the county and go through deeds and figure that out. But in terms of the existing problem there, it's very complicated to begin to understand who's responsible, to what degree they're responsible, and so forth. So just wanted to kind of get that out there as well. Were there any other comments from the council on this? Please.
Thanks, I'm Keith Desnall. I'm at 207 North Union also. A couple of things about extending hours. There is a different type of clientele that goes into a store, such as a dispensary, in the evening versus in the daytime and the early evening. I live across the street. That's not a part of the community that I would like to have hanging out outside my door. There is a difference between what time a restaurant and bar closes and what time a dispensary closes. A restaurant and a bar, by definition, serves food. It helps mitigate the effects of the alcohol that's being served. A bar has a responsibility to stop serving people when they are intoxicated. The dispensary is supposed to not sell anything to people that are obviously already under the influence. And I have personally seen the dispensary across the street from my house do so a couple of times. When I've gone in to have conversations with their management at the time about trying to be a better neighbor. The question is, anecdotal evidence of speeding on Elm Street in North Union. Yeah, it's anecdotal because the police don't happen to be there when it happens. Put a couple of radar strips in. Keep track of how many people are going down those streets that are speeding. Not that difficult a thing to research. I've almost had my dogs get run over on the streets, getting out of the cars. I've had a hop back in the cross paths plenty of times. I have sent pictures to the mayor and to Lieutenant Brown of cars parked illegally on the wrong side of the streets, in the crosswalks. I've done all that. I gave up doing it because it wasn't doing any good. So I personally have documented a ton of this stuff. We've had lots of really good conversations. Thank you. I've had good conversations with Lieutenant Brown. He blew my mind. I'm really freaking annoyed with, the Attorney General, but there's nothing I can do about it, about the lighting up right as they're walking out and all that sort of stuff. Can't do anything about that. But extending the hours, especially at that location, is going to do nothing but be detrimental to the quality of life of North Union and Elm and all the streets around. Thanks.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. Like my friend Dave Bird, I was kind of expecting a little bit more discussion about stormwater management at kind of a base level. I guess, and being able to ask questions back and forth. I guess I'll go to the planning meeting now to ask the questions. But like, for example, as Jeff points out, I was sitting there thinking the same thing. This sounds like one ordinance fits all. And what we know about this town is that there's very different stormwater issues depending on where you live in this town. Okay, what's up on the hill is not the same as what happens down in town, but it causes a lot of what happens down in town. It's the runoff from up on the hill, but it sounds like a lot of that was geared towards the existing, well, assuming everything's homogeneous, and I'm not sure that's the case. And it's the sort of thing you're hearing about with the central business district versus the mixed district, about, well, Union Chill and, I don't remember the names of it, Bank by the River, they're different, they're in different areas. So maybe there are different things you want to do about that. Same thing, it would seem to me, would have to apply to the stormwater management ordinance because we are so diverse geographically and ecologically. Thank you.
Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I just want to note of some of the things that we have been passing over tonight as small attention, where we spend a lot of time on other matters that I know are matters that people care about, but whether it's yellow bandanas or whatever it might be. But I heard stormwater utility come up in the conversation a few minutes ago, and we all, or several people have noted, we didn't get a chance to ask the questions about the stormwater ordinance. And I don't wanna see stormwater utility come up as, hey, we gotta do this because our ordinance isn't working. Well, we need to spend time on the ordinance and people need to understand it. And I wonder if it makes sense for the community to have the planning board get it on this day and you guys get it the next day to pass, which means, or to consider passage, which really doesn't give much time for people to even know what went to the planning board, even know what's coming up before the council. And I'm just questioning whether that's the best idea when you have so much interest in the city on these things and so much effect if we don't do it right. So I have a great deal of concern about that. I understand you can't talk about whatever you're talking about in terms of the 200 units, but I also know we aren't hearing anything about the redevelopment of the village apartments. We aren't hearing anything about maybe building some houses in part of the Clausen property that is not in the protected area. We aren't hearing anything about the Cardboard property, which might be a place for consideration of some development for affordable housing. So it's just a little worrisome because we only get a chance to see you guys once a month or maybe twice if a person can come to both your meetings. And then all of a sudden it looks as though things are okay, we're moving along. And I don't think on these issues, your fellow travelers here in the city want to think of it that way. 3 different people said to me today, oh, don't worry about that. That's been killed. It's not gonna happen. Well, we're talking tonight as though things are gonna happen. So I just think we gotta do a little bit better job of communicating. I too thought tonight was gonna be a lot more discussion about stormwater. And again, as Dave said, it might be us, but it seems as though we haven't had that opportunity. So appreciate your consideration of those things. Thank you.
You're always welcome to make an appointment with me or to send questions in writing and we'll answer them for you if you like. I'm happy to follow up with anybody at any time on any questions. As I've said for the last almost 3 years now, I answer every email. And I'm happy to set up a meeting with anybody to go through any questions. Occasionally, we've now spent a considerable amount of time working through this ordinance at expense, at $165 an hour for the city engineer. This is every time we have a meeting with Mr. Tittle and a council person and the city engineer, we're running up expenses and we're working toward getting something good done. And we've done something good here with this ordinance. And if you have questions about it, I would encourage you to write to me or to come to the planning board. There'll be opportunity to talk about the planning board. There's also the public hearing and second reading of the ordinance. There's plenty of opportunities for the residents of the city to address questions on any number of things. And in terms of the process, this is not an unusual process. So there have been several instances in the last couple of years where things have gone before the planning board one night. The planning board makes a clear determination and it goes to the council the next day and enjoys passage or adoption. So, in terms of the process is, I think, correct. And I think that in terms of the stormwater management ordinance that we've been talking about, as I noted earlier in the meeting, we did get a letter from the state saying, why hasn't this been done? Right. So at some point we need to get off the fence and we need to move forward with these ordinances. The public is welcome to come along and they're welcome to ask questions. I'm here, the council's here. I'll make the city engineer available to any question that I can't answer. So please, it's not just about the council meetings and the opportunity to ask a lot of questions in a council meeting, but it's engaging kind of during the rest of the week. I'm in City Hall 40 hours a week, so please take advantage of that.
I just wanted to add one thing to what Judy was saying about the affordable housing that I didn't get to talk about. My firm has built some affordable housing before in Ewing, I believe, and another town. And I talked to them how that process worked. And they actually said they'd be very interested in helping out and, proposed giving us $10,000 to help. So if we can find a space, my firm is willing to help out and put $10,000 out and also get people to help build it. So.
And in terms of the village apartments, we have no news to share. So if there were news, we would share it. There's nothing to say, unfortunately. Several people have floated the idea of potentially putting affordable housing on up at Holcomb Park. that's a conversation that we can have. We'll be having, I hope that everybody's gonna come to the affordable housing informational session on Monday. We'll be talking about everything affordable housing. I have, you know, so I'm not necessarily opposed to doing that, but I want to consider the site as a whole in order to do that. So, you know, and I want to make sure that we are giving each thing its due in terms of making sure that we get all the way through a particular process. So at the moment, I think for me, the important thing is to get through whatever happens with the high school redevelopment plan, is to focus on that, because that is the major thing at the moment, right? Whether it's good, bad, otherwise, whether it passes, whether it doesn't pass, whether it ends up in a lawsuit, I don't know. But I need to spend a bulk of my time focused on that, because that's the thing that we've been focused on as a council for the last 2 years. So, you know, it's not a question of not wanting to do different things, but it's a question of keeping focus on the thing that we've already committed to seeing through. So there are only so many hours in my day, and I'm open to a lot, I think, but, you know, for me, the focus has to remain on this potential project until a decision is made one way or another. So I can't be drawn in 1,000 different directions. I need to be focused, and I'm willing to consider just about anything, but in its time. So that's the end of my little soapbox speech for this evening.
Let's talk about the stormwater management just for a second. Is that the addition of minor projects came to pass because we didn't have that as a category. And I think what happens on the hills development influences, I mean, I can't say it again, but water does not run uphill. And part of our approach in this new stormwater ordinance was to make sure that we caught the little projects on the hill that happen and that result in more runoff downtown. So that was not in our original ordinance that was floated around. That was something that conversations with myself, and the mayor, and the council, and our engineer was to add something that addressed the concerns that you had just mentioned. So I think that was a major change in the way we are approaching stormwater management. And, you know, hopefully the planning board will review this and approve it or make recommendations. But, you know, we know where the water comes from.
And I would just, to flesh that out a little bit, I would also add that it's not just about the hills, right? So it's about the flat part of town. So, you know, there's a house on North Union Street when it was built, I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. For whatever reason, it developed its own stormwater management system, and everything that is generated on that site stays on that site. It's a single family home, and it's a simple system, and everything gets infiltrated back into the ground. And that's a marvelous thing. It doesn't matter whether you're on the hill or whether you're downtown. Those are the kinds of things that we should be encouraging all over town. And the idea that you could kind of like not pick and choose, but tailor the ordinance to some areas and not the other, that makes things very complicated as well, because then you've got oversight issues that are very, you know, just intensifies and makes it a lot more complicated. So happy to answer questions and have conversations about this, but now I would entertain. Is there anybody online who wants to speak?
No.
How many people do you have?
Right now we have 6, but at the very beginning we had 17.
Okay, thanks. So I would ask for a motion to close the public participation session. So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 And motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 9:40.